He threw his sister out of the house for having bad character, but a year later, he traveled across the world begging her to forgive him. Cale worked 2 jobs to raise his sisters after their parents died, but one sister betrayed him, and the other sacrificed everything for him. By the time he discovered the truth, she had already left the country. If you have watched to this point, kindly subscribe and watch to the end. But when a large sum of savings disappears, a web of malicious lies tears the family apart. The floorboards of the cramped apartment didn't just creak, they seemed to groan under the weight of Cale's exhaustion. Alara watched from the shadows of the kitchenette as her older brother unlaced his heavy work boots. His hands were calloused, stained with the grease of the shipyard where he pulled double shifts. Cale was the anchor of their lives, the one who had stepped into the role of provider when their parents passed away years ago. Alara felt a familiar pang of guilt. She stayed home to manage the household and stretch their meager coins, but she knew the physical toll it took on Cale. She tried to make the small space a sanctuary, a place where the harshness of the world couldn't reach him. However, the air in the house was growing thin, poisoned by the restless ambition of their youngest sister, Sienna. While Alara sought peace, Sienna sought an escape that didn't involve hard work. As Cale fell asleep in his chair, Alara noticed a designer shopping bag tucked hidden under Sienna's bed, and she knew the storm was finally making landfall. The quiet life they had built was about to be tested by a vanity they couldn't afford. Sienna arrived home long after the streetlights had flickered to life, her face flushed with a secret excitement. She wasn't wearing her school uniform. Instead, she was draped in a velvet coat that shimmered even in the dim hallway light. Alara stood by the window, her heart sinking. "Sienna, where did that come from?" she whispered, careful not to wake Cale. Sienna didn't flinch. She simply smirked, a look of cold defiance crossing her youthful features. "A friend lent it to me, Alara. Not everyone wants to spend their life smelling like cheap soap and desperation." She brushed past her sister, the scent of expensive tobacco and heavy perfume trailing behind her. Alara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the drafty windows. She knew that Sienna's friends were dangerous people who traded in favors and broken lives. She wanted to tell Cale, but seeing the dark circles under his eyes, she couldn't bear to add another weight to his shoulders. She decided to handle it herself, unaware that Sienna was already weaving a web of lies to protect her new, gilded lifestyle. The velvet felt like a shroud, covering the sisterly bond they once shared with a layer of cold, expensive silk. The next morning, the tension was a physical presence at the breakfast table. Cale stared at the velvet coat draped over the chair, his brow furrowed in confusion and growing anger. "Sienna," he said, his voice low and steady. "Explain this." Sienna didn't even look up from her porridge. "It's just a coat, Cale. Why are you so obsessed with everything I do?" Cale stood up, his chair scraping harshly against the floor. "I'm obsessed because I'm the one who pays for your life. We can't afford this, which means you got it in a way that worries me." Sienna finally looked at him, her eyes flashing with a cruel, calculated brilliance. "Maybe if you were a real man and provided for us properly, I wouldn't have to accept kindness from others." The words were like a physical strike. Alara reached out to touch Cale's arm, but he pulled away, his face pale with hurt. He had sacrificed his youth for them, and Sienna had just told him it wasn't enough. The rift in the family was no longer a crack, it was a canyon. Cale walked out of the house without finishing his meal, the sound of the door slamming echoing like a gunshot through the small, silent rooms. Disaster struck 3 days later. Alara returned from the market to find Cale standing in the middle of their tiny living room, staring at an empty floorboard. The emergency fund, money Cale had painstakingly saved for Alara's education, was gone. The hiding spot had been compromised. Sienna was nowhere to be found, and the house felt violated. Alara sat on the edge of the sofa, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She knew exactly who had taken it. The velvet coats and late-night taxi rides weren't free. When Cale finally spoke, his voice was a broken whisper. "I was going to surprise you with the enrollment fees tomorrow, Alara. I wanted you to have a future." He looked smaller than she had ever seen him, his spirit crushed by the betrayal of his own blood. Alara knelt at his feet, tears streaming down her face. Sienna hadn't just stolen paper and ink. She had stolen the only light Cale had been working toward. The bond of their shared struggle was being dismantled by the very person they were trying to save. In that moment, the poverty they lived in felt like a luxury compared to the bankruptcy of their sister's heart and the loss of their hard-earned dreams. When Sienna finally sashayed through the door that evening, she didn't look like a thief. She looked like a victim. Before Cale could utter a single word, she began to wail, pointing a trembling finger at Alara. "She did it, Cale. I saw her. She's been meeting a man at the park, giving him our money so he'll take her away from here." Alara stood frozen, the sheer audacity of the lie stealing the air from her lungs. "Sienna, how can you say that?" she gasped. But Sienna was a master of manipulation, her tears appearing right on cue. "She hates being poor, Cale. She's always complaining about how much work she has to do." Cale looked between his two sisters, his mind clouded by exhaustion and the stinging pain of the theft. For a split second, he looked at Alara with a flicker of doubt. "Alara, is there anything you haven't told me?" That doubt was the sharpest blade of all. Alara realized that Sienna wasn't just hiding her tracks. She was willing to burn Alara's reputation to the ground to stay warm. The truth was drowning in a sea of performative grief, and Alara found herself unable to swim against the current of her sister's calculated, vicious deception. Alara saw the confusion in Cale's eyes and knew she could fight back, but at what cost? If she proved Sienna was the thief, Cale's heart would break twice, once for the money and once for the realization that his youngest sister was a criminal. She looked at his trembling hands and decided to bear the cross. "Cale, I just wanted us to have something more," she whispered, twisting the truth into a shape that looked like a confession. She didn't say she stole it, but she didn't deny it either. Sienna smirked behind her handkerchief, a victory she hadn't earned glowing in her eyes. Cale didn't yell. He just turned away, his shoulders shaking. "Leave me alone, both of you," he muttered. Alara retreated to her room, her heart feeling like a lead weight. She spent the night staring at the ceiling, listening to Sienna humming a pop song in the next room. Alara realized then that goodness was a quiet thing, often trampled by the loud, colorful lies of those who cared only for themselves. She had saved Cale from the full truth, but she had lost the one thing she valued most, his unwavering trust in her character. Weeks passed, and the atmosphere in the house turned into a cold war. Cale worked longer hours, rarely speaking to Alara, while Sienna flourished. Sienna was constantly out, returning with jewelry and expensive gadgets she claimed were prizes from her school friends. Alara, determined to make things right, took a secret job cleaning offices in the middle of the night. She would leave after Cale fell asleep and return just before dawn, her hands raw from chemicals. She saved every penny, putting it back into the floorboard hiding spot bit by bit. She was exhausted, her skin growing pale and her eyes sunken, but she didn't care. She was buying back her brother's respect, even if he didn't know it yet. Meanwhile, she watched Sienna spiral. The younger sister was becoming more arrogant, treating Alara like a servant. "Make me tea, thief," Sienna would mock when Cale wasn't looking. Alara endured it all, fueled by a singular goal. She hoped that once the money was replaced, she could find a way to heal the rift. But she didn't realize that Sienna's greed was a bottomless pit that no amount of secret labor could ever hope to fill. Sienna's behavior became increasingly erratic. She started bringing friends home when Cale was at work, men in expensive cars who looked at their humble home with disdain. Alara tried to warn her, but Sienna laughed in her face. "You're just jealous, Alara. You're a cleaning lady while I'm moving up in the world." Alara realized that Sienna was being used by these people, but the girl was too blinded by the glitter to see the hooks. One afternoon, a man came to the door looking for Sienna, claiming she owed him a favor for the gifts he had given her. Alara stood her ground, blocking the doorway. "She's not here. Please leave." The man laughed, a cold, oily sound. "Tell your sister that nothing is free." When Sienna returned, Alara confronted her, begging her to stop. "They aren't your friends, Sienna. They're dangerous." Sienna slapped her, the sound echoing in the small kitchen. "Mind your own business." The slap hurt, but the look of pure hatred in Sienna's eyes hurt more. The girl they had raised was gone, replaced by a stranger who saw her own family as obstacles to be pushed aside. One evening, Cale came home early and found Alara scrubbing the kitchen floor, her hands shaking from fatigue. He looked at the floorboard and saw the money was nearly back to its original amount. He looked at Alara's worn-out clothes and the exhaustion etched into her face. "Where did this come from, Alara?" he asked, his voice softer than it had been in months. Alara didn't look up. "I found a way to make it right, Cale. That's all that matters." Cale knelt beside her, picking up her reddened hands. He saw the chemical burns and the broken nails. He began to realize that a thief wouldn't work this hard to return what they had taken. Suspicion finally turned toward Sienna, who was currently in the living room bragging about a new phone. "Alara, did you really take that money?" Cale asked, his eyes searching hers. Alara couldn't lie anymore. She just started to cry, the tears washing away the months of silent suffering. Cale held her, his heart breaking as he realized he had been punishing the innocent while the guilty one was being pampered. The scales were finally starting to balance, but the weight of the injustice was almost too much for him to bear. Cale waited until Sienna was in the middle of showing off her new phone to confront her. "Where did you get that, Sienna?" he asked, his voice like ice. Sienna rolled her eyes. "I told you it was a..." Cale cut her off. "A gift? From who?" "From the men who come here while I'm at work." Sienna's face went pale. "You've been spying on me?" Cale stepped forward, his presence filling the room. "No. Alara has been protecting you. While she was working all night to replace the money you stole, you were bringing thugs to our home." Sienna tried to laugh it off. "She's lying. She's just trying to turn you against me because she's a failure." But Cale wasn't listening to her lies anymore. He saw the truth in the way she wouldn't meet his eyes. He saw the greed in the pile of expensive trinkets on her bed. "I worked my fingers to the bone for you, Sienna. I gave up everything so you could have a life. And you used that life to hurt your sister." Sienna's defiance turned into a snarling rage. "I hate this house. I hate you both. I deserve better than this dump." The argument was interrupted by a violent pounding on the front door. Cale opened it to find two large men standing there, their expressions grim. "We're looking for Sienna," one of them said. "She took something that wasn't a gift, and we want it back. Or, we want the cash value. $5,000. Cale looked at Sienna, who was trembling behind the sofa. "What did you do?" he whispered. It turned out Sienna had borrowed more than just a coat. She had taken a piece of jewelry from one of her friends to sell. Sienna began to scream, blaming the men, blaming the world, blaming Cale. "It's his fault. He doesn't give me enough." The men stepped into the house, their presence threatening. Cale, ever the protector, stood in front of his sisters. "Get out of my house," he told the men. "I'll find a way to pay you, but you leave now." The men laughed. "You have 24 hours, shipyard worker, or we take it out of your hide." After they left, the silence in the room was suffocating. Cale turned to Sienna, and for the first time, he didn't see a sister. He saw a threat to their survival. "I can't do this anymore," Cale said, his voice strangely calm. He looked at the wreckage of their living room, the broken windows, and the fear in Alara's eyes. He looked at Sienna, who was already looking for a way to blame someone else. "Sienna, your character is a poison. You've lied, you've stolen, and now you've brought danger into the only home we have." Sienna started to cry, her usual tactic. "Cale, please, I'm sorry. I'll change." But Cale shook his head. "You've said that before. You tried to ruin Alara's life. You watched her work herself to death to fix your mistakes, and you mocked her for it. You have no heart, Sienna." He went to the closet and pulled out her suitcases. He began throwing her clothes into them. The velvet coat, the silk dresses, the stolen trinkets. "What are you doing?" Sienna shrieked. "I'm protecting what's left of this family," Cale replied. "You aren't a part of it anymore. You want a life of luxury and lies? Go find it. But you won't find it here." He dragged the suitcases to the door and opened it wide, pointing to the dark street outside. Sienna stood at the threshold, her face twisted in a mask of pure venom. "You're throwing me out? Over a few mistakes? You're pathetic. Poor loser, Kale. I'll be fine. I'll be famous while you're still rotting in this shipyard." Kale didn't react to her insults. He just looked at her with a profound sadness. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Sienna. But I hope you never find your way back here." He pushed the suitcases out and closed the door, locking it with a final, heavy click. Sienna screamed and pounded on the wood for 10 minutes, her voice echoing through the hallway, until finally, her footsteps faded away. Kale leaned his forehead against the door, his chest heaving. Alara stood in the kitchen, her heart breaking for her brother. He had done the hardest thing a protector could do. He had cut off a limb to save the body. They sat together on the floor that night, not speaking, just listening to the sound of the rain against the glass, wondering if they would ever feel like a family again. The days following Sienna's departure were eerily quiet. Kale worked extra shifts to pay off the debt Sienna had incurred, his body moving on autopilot. He didn't talk much, his eyes always staring at some distant point. Alara tried to bring life back into the apartment. She cooked Kale's favorite meals, kept the place bright, and tried to talk about the future. "Maybe I can actually go to school now, Kale," she suggested one evening. Kale just nodded, but there was no spark in his eyes. The house felt empty, haunted by the ghost of the sister they had lost. Kale blamed himself for not being a better brother, for not seeing the signs sooner. Alara blamed herself for not being stronger. They were safe, but they were broken. The bad character was gone, but it had taken their joy with it. Alara realized that while Kale had saved her from Sienna, he was now drowning in his own guilt. She watched him sleep in his chair, his hands twitching as if he were still hauling heavy ropes, and she knew that their peace was only on the surface. Alara made a difficult decision. She realized that as long as she stayed, Kale would always be reminded of the pain. Every time he looked at her, he saw the sister he had doubted and the sister he had exiled. She wanted him to have a life where he wasn't always a provider or a protector. She wanted him to be just Kale. She began to make her own plans. She applied for an international nursing scholarship, one that offered a full ride and a stipend, but it was far away. She didn't tell Kale. She didn't want him to stop her out of a sense of duty. She worked her cleaning job and studied until her eyes burned. One morning, the acceptance letter arrived. It was her ticket to a new life, a way to relieve Kale of the burden of her existence. She felt a mixture of terror and excitement. She loved her brother more than anyone, but she knew that for both of them to heal, they needed distance. She began to pack her things slowly, hiding her suitcase under the bed, waiting for the right moment to leave a final note. On her last night, Alara cooked a massive feast. She used the last of her secret savings to buy the best ingredients. Kale came home and was surprised by the spread. "What's all this for?" he asked, a small smile finally touching his lips. "Just because," Alara said, her voice thick with unshed tears. They talked that night more than they had in months. They laughed about their childhood, about the times they had snuck out to see the ships in the harbor. For a few hours, the shadows were gone. Kale looked at Alara and saw the sister he had always loved. "I'm glad you're here, Alara," he said softly. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Those words almost made her stay, but she saw the way his hands still shook, the way he looked older than his years. She knew she had to do this for him. When he went to bed, she sat at the table and wrote her letter. "You've spent your whole life protecting us. Now, it's time for you to live for yourself. I'm going to become the person you always believed I could be." Kale woke up the next morning to a house that felt different. The air was too still. He walked into the kitchen, expecting to see Alara making tea, but the kettle was cold. He saw the note on the table and felt a cold pit form in his stomach. He read it once, then twice, his hands beginning to tremble. He ran to her room. The bed was made, the window was open, and her suitcase was gone. "Alara," he shouted, his voice echoing through the empty rooms. He ran into the hallway, then out into the street, but she was nowhere to be found. He felt a panic he had never known. When he had thrown Sienna out, it was an act of will. But this was Alara choosing to leave him. He sat on the front steps, the letter clutched in his hand, feeling like the world had finally collapsed. He had rid his house of the bad sister, only to have the good one slip through his fingers. He realized then that he had focused so much on the character of his sisters that he had forgotten to just be their brother. A year passed. Cale became a shadow of his former self. He still worked at the shipyard, but he spent every cent he didn't need for rent on finding Alara. He hired private investigators. He posted on social media. He traveled to nearby cities whenever someone reported a sighting. He was obsessed. He had forgiven Sienna in his heart, not for what she did, but because he realized that his own rigidity might have pushed her toward her path. But Alara, he couldn't forgive himself for Alara. He remembered the doubt in his eyes when Sienna had lied. He remembered the chemical burns on her hands. He realized she had left because she felt like a burden, and that thought was a knife in his soul. He kept her room exactly as she had left it, hoping that one day he would wake up and hear the kettle whistling. He became known as the Searcher at the docks, a man who looked at every passing ship with the hope of a traveler returning. But the ships only went out. They never seemed to bring his sister back. One rainy Tuesday, a woman Cale didn't recognize approached him at the docks. "Are you Cale?" she asked. He nodded, his heart skipping a beat. "I'm a friend of Alara's. We worked together at the clinic where she volunteered." Cale grabbed her shoulders, his eyes wild with hope. "Where is she? Tell me where she is." The woman stepped back, startled by his intensity. "I don't have an address, but I know she was finishing her final exams. She was top of her class, Cale. She's going to be an incredible nurse." Cale felt a surge of pride, followed by a wave of crushing loneliness. "Please, I just need to see her. I need to tell her I'm sorry. I need to tell her I know she didn't take that money." The woman looked at him with a mixture of pity and hesitation. "She knows you know, Cale. She saw you replace the money in the floorboard before she left. She just wanted you to be free of the responsibility of her." Cale fell to his knees in the mud. "I don't want to be free. I want my sister." Cale sold everything he owned to fund one last, desperate search. He tracked down the agency that had handled Alara's scholarship. He spent days in their lobby, refusing to leave until someone spoke to him. Finally, a sympathetic administrator took him into a back office. "Sir, we cannot give out personal information of our graduates. It's for their safety." Cale showed her a picture of Alara, the one of her smiling at their last dinner. "She's not in danger from me," he whispered. "I'm the danger she's running from, and I just want to tell her the race is over. I just want her to come home." The administrator looked at the photo, then at the broken man in front of her. She sighed and turned her computer screen toward him. "She isn't in this country anymore, Cale. She moved on a special placement 2 weeks ago." Cale's heart hammered against his ribs. "Where? Tell me where, and I'll walk there if I have to." He gripped the edge of the desk, his knuckles white, praying for a name he could follow. The justice Cale had prayed for didn't come from his own hands, but from the weight of Sienna's own deceit. After months of living on lies, the friends Sienna had chosen turned on her when she could no longer provide them with information or money. She was found shivering in a cold police station, caught in a web of petty thefts and fraudulent schemes. When Cale went to see her one last time, he didn't see the proud, arrogant girl who had mocked their poverty. He saw a broken soul who finally realized that beauty and silk couldn't buy a clean conscience. "I lost everything, Cale," she sobbed through the plexiglass. Cale looked at her with a mix of pity and firm resolution. "You didn't lose it, Sienna. You threw it away. Now, you have to live with the silence you created." He walked away, leaving her to face the legal consequences of her actions. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about the world finally reflecting the truth of her character back at her, leaving her with nothing but the memory of the sister she had betrayed. With Sienna facing her sentence, Cale's heart turned entirely toward the north. He had spent every waking hour working at the shipyard, but now he had a new fire in his soul. He began writing letters to every hospital and clinic in the Canadian territories, sending a photo of Alara and a simple message: "I am the brother who failed, looking for the sister who stayed true." He didn't expect an answer, but he refused to stop. One evening, A weathered envelope arrived with a maple leaf stamp. Inside was a short note from a head nurse in a small town called Whitehorse. "We have a nurse here who matches your description. She is the heart of our clinic, but she speaks of her past like a closed book. If you come with peace, not just apologies." Cale sold his last remaining possessions, his watch, his furniture, and his father's old tools, to buy a one-way ticket. He wasn't going to bring her back. He was going to find out if he still had a sister. The air in Canada was a shock to Cale's lungs, sharp and crystalline, a world away from the humid, salt-heavy air of the shipyard. He traveled by bus for 18 hours, watching the landscape turn into a vast, white wilderness. He arrived in Whitehorse as the sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of violet and gold. He found the clinic at the edge of town, a modest building that glowed like a lantern against the dark forest. His heart hammered against his ribs, a rhythm of terror and hope. He stood outside the glass doors, watching the nurses move back and forth in their blue scrubs. Then he saw her. Alara was hanging a bag of fluids, her face calm and focused, her movements graceful. She looked older, stronger, and infinitely more beautiful than he remembered. She wasn't the tired girl scrubbing floors anymore. She was a woman who had built a life out of the wreckage he had helped create. He reached for the door handle, his hand trembling. The bell above the door chimed, and Alara looked up. For a long, breathless moment, the world stopped. The chart she was holding slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the linoleum floor. Cale stood there, covered in the dust of his journey, his eyes brimming with tears. "Alara," he whispered, the name feeling like a prayer. She didn't scream, and she didn't run. She simply walked toward him, her eyes searching his face for the doubt that had once lived there. When she saw only love and a deep, agonizing regret, her own walls began to crumble. Cale fell to his knees right there in the clinic lobby. "I know the truth," he sobbed. "I know everything you did for me. I'm so sorry I let you leave thinking I didn't believe in you." Alara knelt in front of him, taking his calloused hands in hers, the same hands she had cleaned and bandaged for years. "I didn't leave because I was angry, Cale," she said softly. "I left so you could see who you were without the weight of us. And I think you finally have." The reunion wasn't a return to the past, but the beginning of a new story. Alara didn't move back to the shipyard, and Cale didn't ask her to. Instead, Cale found work in the local timber mills, using his strength to build a life in the cold, honest air of the north. They shared a small cabin that smelled of pine and fresh tea, a home built on trust instead of secrets. On Sundays, they would sit by the fire and write a letter to Sienna, hoping that the justice she was facing would eventually lead her to her own redemption. They had lost their parents, their home, and for a while, each other. But as the northern lights danced over their roof, Cale looked at Alara and realized that karmic justice had a beautiful twin, Grace. He had been a protector who failed, but he had become a brother who stayed. They were no longer three souls drifting in the dark. They were a family that had survived the storm and found the shore, together at last. If you were Cale, could you ever truly forgive Sienna after what she did? Or is some betrayal just too deep to fix? Let me know in the comments. Is she a victim of her own greed, or just plain evil?